Alright you guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going over another deck. We're going to be going over Speed Crobat. Speed Crobat? I think that's like Crobat. I'll call it Crobat. I don't know if it's necessarily Speed Crobat or just like regular Crobat or Crobat Spread or however you want to call it. It is Crobat. It's based off of de-evolving and re-evolving Crobat over and over and over again to take cheap prizes on their bench, and then using cheap one energy attacks to either soften something up for next turn or finish something off. Pretty simple as that. It's going to be using this Crobat, and we actually are going to be playing Crobat Prime and Crobat Break. In the games that I played with this deck, I actually didn't use the Break that often, so you could cut this, and then the Prime was actually not used that often either. You could just cut them completely and just play the Evolve, De-Evolve, and then having Skill Dive be a good enough attack. But these other ones, this has Skill Dive too, so it's still a 30 snipe, but this one's an EX, this one's not. And then the Break's attack is pretty good for resetting, 68 Paralyze, and goes back to the deck, so that's awesome if you're like running low on resources. But it does take 3 energies to use, so you need like a Dimension Valley and a DCE or however. But like I said, the main point of this deck is to evolve and de-evolve Crobat over and over again. So you're also going to be looking at these two Golbats. This Dark Golbat has when it evolves it deals 10 anywhere, and this Golbat when it evolves it deals 20 anywhere. The pluses and minuses to both of these are, yeah, this is 10 more damage, but this is grass, so it works with Forest of Giant Plants if you only have that out. So that's a kind of a weird interaction there. And then 2 Zubats, these are ones with free retreat. This entire line all has free retreat. It's really nice. So a 2/2/2 line, you want to play the free retreat grass ones for Forest of Giant Plants if that's in play. These are your 2 Golbats. You don't really need to play like a 3/3/2 line, you know, because these are your important ones here. These are like optional, like I said. So yeah. There's your Crobat line. You might be curious about what other Pokemon are in this deck. It's not a whole lot, actually, because like I said, it's all about evolving and de-evolving, but you do need some other stuff in here. You know, just in case some other stuff. You have Crobat, since you're already Crobat G. You're already playing some scoop up effects and whatnot, so you might as well play this for that extra 10 damage on the bench. You also have Skunk Tank G. It's another 10 damage. This Proxy is very badly cut. My bad. But it does poison them, so that's an extra 10 damage if you need the damage. You're looking at Unknown and Unknown R just for extra draw power. You do have a lot of ways to recover stuff from the discard pile, because you're constantly reusing stuff, right? Like you're constantly getting stuff back. You play like Pokemon Retriever and that sort of thing. So if you needed that extra draw power, you have it in Pokemon form. And then we're actually also playing a 1/1 Azelf line. Now this Azelf has put 2 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon that already have damage on it, so it's a way to amp up their damage. But Deep Balance is actually a really good attack. Choose one of your opponent's Pokemon, put 1 damage counter on that Pokemon for each energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. So if you're playing against like an Energy Flood deck and they have like 9 or at least 8 energy on their side of the field, you can snipe a Claydol, you can snipe a Porygon, you can snipe a lot of things. Just because they have a whole lot of energies on their side of the field. It's a very, very good card, and with Crobat in mind, it does soften some stuff up. So it's one of the best sniping cards out there, plus you have this Shining Eyes in scenarios where you're trying to amplify some damage on their side to weaken everything up for Crobat. If you're looking at one way of winning with this deck, you can just like soften everything up and then try to sweep their board, take all 6 knockouts in one, so they're left with nothing on board. That's one way of going about it. But this deck is pretty speedy and pretty fast. You're taking a lot of cheap knockouts. So I don't recommend the 6 prize strategy. I don't even know why I mentioned it. But this is your big hitter sort of thing. You notice that there's not a lot of stuff that's going to deal a bunch of damage just for flat rate. This is the only one that's guaranteed 60 damage, and that's the most out of everything. The rest of this is very dependent on either what your opponent has, what you have, that sort of thing. So that's all the Pokemon. Like I said, we're going to be really focusing on evolving and de-evolving Crobat Phantom Forces right here. When we go into the items and stuff, you'll notice some differences there, rather than some standard looking builds. So, Crobat there. Your support Pokemon is going to be a lot of the same. Instead of the basic 10, it's the basic 11, because we are going to be playing the Porygon Z. I've said it before in some other videos, when Porygon Z is worth it and when it's not worth it. Porygon Z is worth it here because essentially it adds all that extra damage. If you have a stage 2 with 130 HP, that rare candy from basic with 50, basically Porygon 2 is doing 80 damage, right? You need 80 damage less to take a knockout. So Porygon Z is going to make sure that all of their basic Pokemon are now all of a sudden in snipe range of Crobat. So that's where we play that. Plus you play a lot of de-evolve effects anyways, so you're not too worried about evolving, de-evolving to lock up backup or download. Your Porygon Z is not going to stay on these for very long. But anyways, that makes sense, right? Like, I don't know, it allows you to reuse backup too if you evolve and de-evolve it. So there's that. We're going to move on to supporters. Here we go, moving all this stuff over so we can get these. We're going to play an AZ. A lot of standard looking stuff. AZ Babies, Colress, Copycat, Guzma, and Hex. You're not going to see a lot of weird stuff here. You are going to see an Iris because this deck does struggle with damage output because it's, like I said, 60 is your best damage outputter. I think Iris needs to go in a lot more decks moving forward, but this deck especially needs Iris. You're going to be looking at Karina, both of the Lysander cards, Marlies. You're going to play Brimies as well as AZ. It's extra scoop up effects. I haven't decided if Acerola is worth it in this deck or not, because if you don't have damage on you, Acerola is not going to work, so you kind of like need to get hit once. But if you do, you're like Acerola-ing. I don't know, it's weird. Like I think Acerola could be useful in this deck. It's not right now because I don't know about the damage. I would play a Rainbow Energy if I put it in Acerola. So there's just that. Mallow, Pokemon Collector, Juniper, Oak, Sycamore. You got an Admin, a Rosie's, and a Teammates to finish it out. Kind of standard looking supporter stuff. You see 6, 9, 18, 21. A little bit on the lower side just because you play a lot more items. It's a little bit faster paced. You can build this deck in mind with like straight donking. You can build a lot of item-based draw, a lot of de-evolution effects, a lot of reusing stuff. You can build it so where like you're trying to get that turn 1, turn 2. The way that I'm building it is so you can still get that turn 1, turn 2, but later it can stand up late game, right? You have still all these draw supporters so that you're not going crazy turn 1, and you have a little bit of legs to stand on, and you don't lose like Spiritomb starts and that sort of thing. So just keep that in mind that this deck can be built a completely different way that plays like way less supporters. So having 21 is still on the lower side, but this deck does try to want to go faster. Try to want to go faster? Is that even... That wasn't a phrase that I used. Items. Like I said, there's going to be extra items here because it is a faster paced deck. So keep that in mind. You can build this strictly item-based draw. But we're going to play Acrobike and Bill. Computer Search. There's your de-evolution spray to reuse items and whatnot. Here's Erica and Escape Rope, and then here's the Hyper Devolution Spray. Works the same way as Devo Spray. Hypnotox Laser for a little bit extra damage. You're going to be trying to spread damage, so Laser's a obvious inclusion. Invention, that's in every single deck. Item Fighter, Junk Arm, Level Ball. You're going to have Treaty in this deck for a little extra draw power, and you want to speed up the process of the game. So if they choose to take a prize, awesome. Anything you can do to speed up the game, that's what you have that flyer for. Luxury Ball, Max Potion, all of your attackers are for 1 energy, so Max Potion makes sense. Misty's Wrath for extra draw. Mr. Fuji to reuse some stuff. Choose a Pokemon on your bench and shuffle it all into your deck. So if you have some searching cards, you can shuffle the Crobat line in and then just search for it. That's the beauty of having like a 2-2-2 line, is that you can have a Crobat on your, or a Golbat on your bench and shuffle the Crobat back in and then search for the Crobat to get it back out with Mr. Fuji. Awesome there. Palpad, you have Poketerm specifically just for Crobat G, and Skunk Tank if it's stuck in the active, I guess. But this is basically, you have to think of it as this is a plus 10 damage. That's really all this is. It's just 10 extra damage because you're going to have that Crobat G out. Pokédex handy, extra draw power. Like I said, this deck's a little bit faster. You can build it even more fast if you want to. Pokemon Communication, Retriever for some recovery when it ends up in the discard. Trader for some extra search. This deck needs a lot of search. Professor Oak, Recycle This is going to generally target your de-evolution spray or hyper de-evolution spray, just so you can get that extra 30 damage. You have to think about these cards as 30 damage, right? This is plus 30, this is plus 30, these are potentially plus 30, that's plus 10, that's plus 10 there. You know, that's how you have to think about these cards in terms of this is what the damage does. Retriever. Scoop up, remember this only grabs the basic, it doesn't grab the entire line back, so you're really only going to be using this for Crobat or to get your Uxie or Lapras out of the field. Super Rod, Super Scoop Up, this can bring up the entire line, so that's your plus, that's a plus like 50 damage right there if you can hit heads on it. Swoop Teleporter in every single deck. Time Space for some extra recovery. This deck does need recovery, and you know, once your line goes in the discard pile, you can flip it to get it back. Timer Ball, you're playing a lot of evolutions, and then rounding it out with Ultra Ball, Via Seeker, and Field Blower as your staple looking stuff. So you notice there is a little bit extra bit of items. It's mainly in the form of Draw Power and Recovery, and a little bit extra search in the form of Trader and Timer Ball. So that's just kind of where the items go. They just go from more search, more Draw Power, more recovery. That's what you are sacrificing in terms of Draw Power in terms of supporters. This deck still works with more of this sort of stuff. You can just brick early, and if you brick early, it's kind of hard to catch up, because if your opponent gets like a fatty out, dealing 30 damage every evolve and de-evolve is not great. Mind you, that's where Porygon Z, when that came out, really helped this deck especially. But yeah, you gotta be prepared to be doing some math and some weird funky numbers with this deck, for sure. I support stadiums, that's what I'm looking for. We're going to play the Broken Time Space, obviously, so you can de-evolve and re-evolve. Same with Forest of Giant Plants, you have two ways of getting that Crobat out over and over again. We're going to be playing Verbank for Skunk Tank. This is an extra 20 damage on the Skunk Tank. It also does help your Crobat Prime, that does poison. And then D-Valley, because all your stuff is Psychic, might as well play this in case you ever need it. Mostly you're going to want these two out, but these two do help in certain situations. Very specific situations. Tools, you're going to be looking at Flowstone. A lot of your stuff is free retreat, but you always want to have one Floatstone. Muscle Bandage, you got some extra damage, you're going to need this. And then Rescue Starf, because if your Crobat G is ever in the active and they knock it out and can't get rid of this, pick it back up, deal 50 more damage. Pretty great. Your standard 4, Elite 4 here, plus a Dowsing Machine. You know, you could be considering Scoop Up Cyclone here, and I don't think you'd be necessarily wrong with that. I like Dowsing Machine because it does grab you De-Evolution Spray, so you're essentially doing the same thing anyways that you would be doing with Scoop Up Cyclone. So there's pluses and minuses to both. You can play on it. Like, honestly, I'm always like, hey, you play Dowsing, hey, you play Dowsing. Like, that's generally what I always think of. But this deck is the one deck that I could be like, okay, sure, play Scoop Up Cyclone. I get it. It's like the one exception to the rule. And then energy cards are going to be a little bit interesting. You're going to be playing a DCE. Your attacks are mostly for colorless anyways, and this helps with the break. You're going to be playing a Rescue Energy, so that, like I said, with Rescue Scarf, it's the same scenario. And you're actually also going to play a Retro Energy. What this does is when you attach it, it de-evolves it and sends it to the discard pile. So since you play so much recovery, you can attach this to your Crobat, play Rescue, do 30 more damage, and then attack with it. So that's why I like this. And then 5 Psychics. I think that's more than enough in this deck. You're not going to be attacking a whole lot, and all of your attackers are for 1 energy. And you burn through your deck anyways because you play an extra amount of draw power. You're going to play extras of those. So that's it. That's the deck. If you have any questions, please let me know. It's mainly just kind of a spread-oriented deck, and you're going to take knockouts on whatever you want. It plays similarly to Dusknoir-based decks, just in a little bit different form, because you're going to be getting it from evolving. A Hex one turn really ruins this deck. That's where that Azelf comes in handy, because you can still do damage that turn. But if you get Hex looped, gooped a couple times, if you're playing against Garbodor, that sort of thing, it really ruins this deck. But anyways, like I said, if you have any questions, please let me know. If not, hope you enjoyed.